The holidays are upon us, and while most are looking forward to gathering around the table and enjoying some wonderful food with our loved ones, some of us have to do the cooking. It's me. I'm doing the cooking. So, if you're also panicking about what to serve this holiday season, here are three quick, easy, and mildly adventurous holiday sides that are sure to impress. First up is a rich, silky, creamy sweet potato soup. For that, we have three large sweet potatoes, that's about 3 pounds. Begin by peeling the potatoes, then chop into a rough dice. Also, be sure to hold on to about a quarter of the potato skins for something. However large or small you chop these, just make sure the pieces are all roughly the same size. This will help ensure that they cook evenly. Next up is one medium-sized parsnip, and just like the potato, we'll peel and chop into bite-sized chunks roughly the same size as our sweet potatoes. And if you're not familiar, parsnips are earthy, slightly sweet root vegetables closely related to carrots. And I guess potatoes, maybe? I don't know. If you can't find it, sub in half a medium-sized carrot. Next up is this medium-sized shallot. Just give that a quick spin so that you can get a nice clean cut when you edit your video. Now we can give that shallot a rough dice. You can also substitute a third of a white or a yellow onion here instead, though I wouldn't recommend using a red onion here as that would discolor the soup. Now we'll grab a medium-sized saucepan and over medium heat, melt about 4 tablespoons of butter, then add the shallot, along with a few sprigs of fresh thyme, and saute for about 3 to 4 minutes. Once the shallot has softened and the thyme has become aromatic, throw in the diced sweet potato and parsnip and the reserved potato peel. Then add roughly 3 cups, 24 ounces of water. Bring the pot up to a simmer, then kill the heat, cover with a lid, and let the potatoes steep in the hot liquid for about 20 minutes. Adding the potato skins here will help give our soup a nice, earthy backbone to help balance out all the sweetness. I'll temp the water here. It's about 145 Fahrenheit. Anywhere between 110 and 170 will work here. Though this step is optional, I highly recommend it. Letting the potatoes steep in hot but not boiling water allows a special enzyme to more thoroughly break down the starch into maltose, malt sugar. This will result in sweeter potatoes without having to add additional sugar. At least that's what Google tells me. After 20 minutes of steeping, we can add 2 teaspoons, about 15 grams of maple syrup. I'm using the real stuff from Vermont, but hey, I'm not here to judge. Half a teaspoon, 2 grams of apple cider or balsamic vinegar, 1 to 2 tablespoons or 14 to 28 grams of brown sugar, 1.5 teaspoons, 9 grams of kosher salt, and half a teaspoon to 3 grams of black pepper. Simmer the potatoes for about 10 minutes, then add as much heavy cream as you can justify to yourself. I think I added about a quarter cup or 60 grams. We'll let the cream simmer for a few minutes. This will help to add richness and thicken our soup just a little bit. Now I'll remove the thyme sprigs and move this pot over to the counter where I'll puree it smooth using an immersion blender. Once blended, you can either serve it as it is, or if you really want to one-up everyone at the table, you can pass this soup through a fine mesh strainer to remove the last of the pulp and the fiber that didn't get blended up. Once strained, we'll toss the leftover fibers in the garbage, and now we are left with a supremely silky smooth soup that is sure to impress. I'll finish by floating a little more cream on top because this soup is not calorically dense enough, and a sprinkle of freshly minced sage, the ultimate holiday herb. This soup has everything you're looking for in a side dish. It's sweet, creamy, a little earthy, a little more sweet, and most importantly, it's a little more interesting than having the same old sweet potato casserole again. But hey, let's say you're looking for a potato dish that goes in the complete opposite direction. Well, next up we have roasted smashed Shire potatoes. Now, what's a Shire potato, you ask? Well, it's something I just made up. So here, take a look. To start, I have a bag of bite-sized golden potatoes, but any kind roughly this size will work. First, I'll carefully move these over to my cutting board. Now I'll inspect each potato for any significant defects or spots that are particularly dirty or sprouting. This step is mostly optional, by the way, but I'm going to do it. Once I have these potatoes trimmed up, I'll dump them into some boiling salted water, making sure to splash the scalding hot water everywhere. Let these boil for 10 to 15 minutes or until you can easily pierce with a fork. Then we'll move them over to a parchment-lined baking tray for smashing. So the move here is to gently smash these potatoes with a glass or something similar, just enough to make the skins pop and spill the potato out on the sides, but not so much that they're completely flattened. It can also help to oil up the bottom of the glass to keep them from sticking. Here's a close-up shot to better illustrate the process. I'll finish smashing the rest of these potatoes, then on goes a generous amount of olive oil and an even more generous amount of kosher salt. Now I'll load these into my oven that's been preheated at 450 F, that's about 232 C. While those are baking, we can contemplate our topping. Feel free to use whatever you have on hand. I have some nice brie here. That's a soft cow's milk cheese, which perfectly complements our next topping, fruit preserves. I'm using raspberry, but if you wanted to be more festive, I'd go with cranberry or cherry. After about 40 minutes, you can see our potatoes are nicely dark and crispy, so we'll remove from the oven and move to a cutting board to finish. I'll lay some sliced brie on a potato, then top with a spoonful of jam. Then for the thumbnail, I'll finish with just a little bit of sage. These potato bites are the perfect combination of sweet, savory, and crispy, and trust me, you're going to want to try them. For the last recipe, we'll be moving away from the potato and going to something a little more divisive, Brussels sprouts. Now, before you turn the video off, just know that these are not the bland, soggy Brussels sprouts you're imagining. These cherry balsamic glazed Brussels sprouts are sweet and spicy and perfectly roasted. To begin, I have a 1 pound, 16-ounce bag of Brussels. I'd specifically look for a bag of the largest sprouts you can find. I'll start by removing the woody stem, then start peeling off any dirty or decayed leaves. You want to try to leave just a little bit of the stem attached to help hold the rest of the leaves together. Once they look a little more cleaned up, slice each sprout in half, then move to a parchment-lined baking sheet. Here I'll hit these with a generous amount of olive oil, kosher salt, and freshly cracked black pepper. I'll also flip these sprouts so that they're on the flat side. More surface area on the hot pan will help ensure we get maximum browning in the oven. My oven has been preheating to 425 F, that's about 220 C. I'll slide these in and roast for about 10 to 12 minutes or until they're just starting to soften. While the sprouts are roasting, we can work on our cherry balsamic glaze. In a small saucepan over medium heat, I'll pour in about 3/4 of a cup, that's about 6 ounces of pure cherry juice, then roughly half a teaspoon, 2.5 grams of balsamic vinegar. You could use any acid here, but balsamic really pairs well with the cherry juice, so I recommend that. Then maybe 1 teaspoon, 5 grams of ketchup. This will add some extra sweet and sour and will enhance the glossy mouthfeel of the sauce. Lastly, we'll add half a teaspoon, 3 grams of gochujang, which is Korean fermented chili paste. This has become my go-to anytime I want to add some heat to basically anything. I highly recommend keeping a bottle of this stuff on hand, but any other hot sauce will work here. Also, before I forget, I'll add a good amount of fresh cracked black pepper. This pairs really well with cherry, so be generous here. Whisk all of that together and allow to simmer and reduce for about 5 to 10 minutes until it almost reaches a syrup consistency. You'll know you're there when you can leave a trail with a spatula. That looks good, so we'll kill the heat and wait until all the bubbling has stopped before adding a few knobs of butter. I think that was about half a tablespoon, 7 grams. Whisk that in off the heat so as not to break the natural emulsion of the butter. Taste for seasoning, you might need to add a pinch of salt, and then set aside while we check on the sprout. After about 12 minutes, these sprouts are looking nice and charred, and while I can pierce them with a fork, there's still a tiny bit of resistance that's perfect, so I'll move these to a plate so we can get them sauced up. I'll drizzle on a hefty helping of our cherry balsamic glaze, and that's it. These are ready to enjoy. This is genuinely one of the best side dishes I've ever made. The Brussels are perfectly cooked, they're dark and crispy with a creamy interior, and the sweet and sour glaze transforms this somewhat boring leafy green into something decadent and craveable. I really hope you give one of these sides a try. Let me know down in the comments below what you think of this video and what you think my next recipe should be. Until next time.